Grace lies down, feeling a sense of emptiness, as her mind drifts with a simple thought, "Ah!" The thought deepens into a dark desire as Grace reflects, wishing for an end to everything. "I want to die." She catches herself, realizing that those feelings were from her past, and reassures herself it's not how she feels now. Gazing at her reflection, Grace notes her freckled face, seeing it full of life and contemplation. She observes her curly carrot-colored hair, as if taking stock of her own appearance and existence. Her focus shifts to her dark and murky turquoise eyes, revealing a sense of depth and mystery in her gaze. Grace contemplates the exhaustion from her past life and lets out a sigh, wondering about its tiring nature. A curious thought crosses Grace's mind as she questions if she has possessed someone. Her mind flashes back to a romance fantasy novel she read before her demise, titled The Saintess's Wish. The story unfolds in her mind. A typical romance fantasy begins its narrative. Aria, a character with only beauty, suddenly discovers her identity as a saintess one day. Recognized for her saintly status, Aria makes her way to the capital, compelled by her newfound role. Aria meets various people during her journey, helping those in need, including Sylvester, the crown prince of the empire. Despite his position, Prince Sylvester's status was unclear, shrouded in ambiguity and hidden truths. It was known that Sylvester, hiding his curse, was destined to endure against opposition until he met Aria. Thanks to Aria's saintly presence, Sylvester's curse begins to improve, changing his fate. With Aria's help, Sylvester gradually overcomes his challenges, step by step. Grace considers how, so far, everything in the story aligns with a typical romance fantasy narrative. Reflecting further, Grace remembers a unique setting she read about in the novel. The story introduces a second male lead, adding intrigue to the narrative. This character, Duke of the North, Benjamin Felton, captured Grace's curiosity. Unlike the main male lead with black hair, Benjamin's kind-hearted nature and brown hair stood out. It was a peculiar setting for the Duke of the North, seeming unfitting yet intriguing. The unusual trait of him having green eyes added to the mystery surrounding him. What stood out most was the fact that this mysterious character was already married. Grace wonders why the author gave the second male lead these traits, pondering if they enjoyed infidelity dramas. Even with a political marriage, there was more complexity to it. Contemplating the purpose of all this, Grace questions the deeper meaning behind these choices. She acknowledges her current existence, having entered a new body, and ponders her new identity. Now, she realizes she has become Grace, losing the sense of her previous self. Two maids stand before Grace, concerned and seeking her attention. They politely inquire if she would like them to bring out her favorite food, showing their attentiveness. The maids mention a new tea set that has arrived, noting its limited edition, seeking to lift her spirits. Grace dismisses their offers, expressing that it's fine, signaling her desire for solitude. Internally, she feels guilty for worrying them due to her depression and prolonged stay in her room. The maids address Grace with concern, hoping to comfort her. Grace reflects on her life in the mansion, surrounded by maids who care for her. She muses about the original owner of this body, questioning their fate. Grace considers a suggestion they could go for a walk, contemplating the chance to leave her room. The maids enthusiastically agree it's a good idea, eager to prepare Grace's favorite clothes for the outing. They remind her to bathe first, believing it would lift her spirits, mixing joy with maternal care. Grace recalls how she was bedridden until her death before possessing this new body. Despite the body's imperfections, Grace feels grateful to simply stand and move on her own again. One maid asks if she should remove the mirror, showing concern for Grace's feelings about her appearance. Grace declines, feeling a bit accepting. Inwardly, Grace reassures herself that she is not that unattractive, contrary to her initial self-doubt. She realizes that describing Grace as unattractive isn't her actual belief. The previous owner's severe self-loathing still lingers, affecting her thoughts and perception. A maid offers help with bathing, continuing their care and attention to Grace's well-being. Grace agrees and asks to be called when they're done, maintaining her need for personal space. In the solitude of the bath, Grace reflects on the awkwardness of needing assistance with such a personal task. She realizes that Grace, too, probably felt embarrassed about these routine matters. It becomes apparent that the previous Grace likely disliked showing her body, indicating lingering discomfort. As the warmth of the bath surrounds her, Grace feels a bit of relief and comfort in the solitude. The maids are excited about the long-awaited walk, believing it will be enjoyable for everyone. Grace, thinking honestly, is ready to face the day, despite her lingering thoughts. As she dresses, Grace notes how all the clothes seem similar, pondering their selection. Despite this, she appreciates the effort and convinces herself it will be fine, feeling a sense of acceptance. With resolve, Grace declares that she can face the outside world once more. As she presents herself, others react with surprise and curiosity at her transformed appearance. Reflecting on her past behavior, Grace acknowledges she rarely went out before, marking a change. She contemplates the attention she should expect as she steps outside her comfort zone. Determined, Grace resolves not to shrink back, ready to embrace whatever comes. Stepping into the garden, Grace notes its beauty, now seeing it up close for the first time. A maid comments on the master's excellent taste, enhancing Grace's appreciation for the garden. Grace becomes curious, her thoughts focusing on the identity of the master. The maids explain that the garden was designed to be visible from her room window, crafted by the master for her. Grace finds this hard to believe, knowing the reality of her situation well. She senses the approach of another person, signaled by footsteps entering the scene. The presence of warm brown hair feels comforting, a familiar sensation blending with the surroundings. The approaching figure, with green eyes as vibrant as the greenery, greets Grace. Benjamin Felton stands before her, inquiring about the reason for her visit, and reflecting a gentle demeanor. Grace reassures that his question wasn't offensive, while noticing kindness reflected in his features. Benjamin confesses his worry for Grace, hinting at his deeper concern for her welfare. Grace's inner thoughts play with dismissing his concern as nonsense, reflecting her skepticism. As Grace stands opposite him, she realizes her role as the wife of the second male lead, often overlooked in the novel. Embracing her new identity, Grace acknowledges her name, Grace Felton. Grace Felton reminisces about her past name, Grace Linden, before her marriage. Grace stands alongside Benjamin, pondering if she had truly met him just 3 times before their marriage. Despite meeting Benjamin only a few times, Grace married him and soon withdrew from social circles. In her thoughts, Grace wishes her solitude was just a simple seclusion. Grace expresses how thoughts of Benjamin bring discomfort, despite the beauty of her surroundings. Her mind races with unease, as Grace ponders whether it is her situation or Benjamin himself causing her concern. The intensity of her worries crescendos in an unsettling forest location. A voice calls out to Grace, inquiring if anything is wrong, cutting through her reflections. Benjamin stands before Grace, offering reassurance that there is no problem, but the tension lingers. He senses Grace's cold demeanor, suggesting she might prefer to retreat to her room. As Grace struggles with his kind gestures, she recalls the unsettling reputation he holds. Grace was merely a brief figure in the novel, and her demise was noted without comprehensive detail, leaving Benjamin's role in her situation ambiguous. Following Grace's death, Benjamin gradually unravels, his character shifting in alarming ways. His actions grow increasingly reckless, leading to a fateful showdown with the protagonist. Despite her circumstances, Grace reflects somberly, feeling her life slipping away. Grace contemplates whether if she hadn't awakened through reincarnation, the conclusion might have been equally grim. The effects of Benjamin's influence are deeply affecting, leaving Grace with a sense of inevitability. Grace quietly resigns herself as a misplaced wife, pondering her capacity for real love. Exhausted, she succumbs to a moment of despair, weighed down by these thoughts. Grace decides to trail Benjamin closely, wary of revealing her vulnerability. Uncertain, she fears provoking Benjamin's fury might hasten her end. Troubled by hazy memories, she tries to find proof of Benjamin's alleged cruelty. Grace reasons that a mere novel character interaction can't determine her fate. A maid approaches with a light request, bringing Grace back to the present. The maid offers to have Grace's meal delivered to her room, willing to accommodate. Grace agrees, asking the maid to set it up nearby for convenience. Grace reflects on her own appearance, contemplating her plump hands. Her thoughts drift to how these features might be perceived by others. Suddenly, a familiar beeping sound rings out, stirring unexpected confusion in Grace. She struggles to pinpoint the source of the noise within her surroundings. Convinced she heard something definite, Grace searches frantically in her room. The haunting echo of laughter resonates in her mind, deepening her fear. The maid's return breaks the tension, announcing that the meal has arrived. Grace appreciates the simple meal prepared, knowing it is easy on her unsettled stomach. With a polite smile, Grace thanks the maid for her assistance. Encouraged to ask for anything she needs, Grace agrees with a quiet nod. The enticing aroma of the food surrounds Grace, yet her mind remains distracted. Through the window, Grace notices a carriage from the main estate, triggering curiosity. Grace questions the maid about the carriage's purpose and his Grace's destination. Somewhat evasively, the maid hesitates before attempting an answer. Grace, suspicious, expresses her concern whether the maid monitors her more than assists her. Flustered, the maid denies such intentions, insisting she isn't here for surveillance. Grace presses for clarity, asking directly where his Grace is heading, and the maid hesitantly admits she knows. Grace is curious about the whereabouts of His Excellency and asks Sally if she knows where he is going. Sally responds with a hesitant, "Ah," as she seems surprised by the question. Grace, noticing Sally's hesitation, presses further by wondering why she won't answer if she knows where His Excellency is. Sally stammers a reply, appearing conflicted. Grace questions if Sally is monitoring her instead of serving her, challenging Sally's intentions as she looks intently at her. Sally quickly denies Grace's accusation, insisting that monitoring her is not the case and trying to reassure Grace. Grace demands an answer to her question, repeating her inquiry about His Excellency's destination while sitting at a table, emphasizing her need for information. Sally finally concedes, responding with a reluctant yes, indicating she does have the information Grace requested. Sally discloses that His Excellency is at the Rondel Canal. Grace seems to take note of this revelation as the atmosphere in the room shifts. Grace wonders if St. Anna's Day is coming since she heard that this is when great things happen. She appears thoughtful about the significance. Reflecting in front of a mirror, Grace considers that meeting with His Excellency at the canal means something important. She contemplates her appearance longingly. Grace is amazed by her reflection, questioning if this is really her. She wonders about how others perceive her, motivated by the realization. Sally rushes to Grace, clearly worried, asking if she's okay. Grace reassures Sally, stating she's fine, recovering her composure quickly. A beautiful woman is shown, with the narration highlighting how His Majesty always recognized Anna's promised beauty, full of charm and allure. The narration focuses on Anna's bright eyes, gleaming hair, and flawless skin, emphasizing her unparalleled beauty as Grace continues to ponder. An image of Benjamin is shown alongside Grace, reflecting a memory or a relationship. Grace ponders whether she should take a step forward despite the uncertainty of his word being true. The maid interrupts Grace's thoughts, calling her name urgently twice. Grace acknowledges her, and the scene darkens with a butterfly floating mysteriously. Grace reflects on how walking made her feel as uncertainty brews. Her drawn, chibi-like character demonstrates her inner confusion and doubt in a comedic tone. Sitting in contemplation, Grace admits her struggles with running and fitness. She entertains the idea of at least walking, expressing a sense of hopefulness. Grace stands up, steeling herself and thinking deeply. She resolves to walk to improve her condition, imagining scenarios where she appreciates her own beauty. Determined, Grace decides to divorce Benjamin, visualizing her goals clearly. Her strong stance indicates serious resolve toward her decisions. Grace envisions a scene at the Rondell Canal, pondering the possibility of Benjamin sharing a sweet moment there with someone else, questioning their connection. Reflecting on the idea of being an obstacle, Grace decides to step aside, indicating her decision to move out of the way, contemplating her future actions. Grace firmly commits to getting a divorce with urgency, aiming to start anew and live a better life, determined to make changes. The narration reveals that Benjamin was aware of Grace's intentions, implying caution as Grace's feelings of vulnerability and the need to defend herself. A mysterious voice questions Grace's presence, compelling her thoughts about how the situation unfolded, identifying herself in the darkness. Sally, noticing Grace deep in thought, asks if she is okay. Grace reassures Sally again, but her internal struggle continues. Grace declares her seriousness about diet and exercise while watching over a new day, committing herself to a healthier lifestyle. Standing before a mirror, Grace contemplates diets and exercise routines. She reflects on maintaining a consistent lifestyle. Grace concludes that appropriate exercise is the key, and she seems resolved to begin making improvements, sealing her internal promise. Grace doubts her body's health to start exercising, feeling that it's not in the best condition yet, considering a body that's mostly failure. Grace wonders why she only possesses dresses and no suitable workout clothes. There's a realization that she needs a change in attire. Grace and Sally converse about finding snug, non-loose clothing, something practical for exercise and not just dresses, striking Grace's curiosity. Sally notices a change in Grace and feels motivated despite not knowing. She's inspired by Grace's determination toward transformation. Grace considers what would suit her new goals. The presence of the body she inhabits presents her with a challenge. She reflects critically. Grace contemplates the feel of the skin she's in, acknowledging the challenges in adjusting to her appearance. The mind is determined. Grace reflects on a transition, the focus on important choices she feels impelled to make, dwelling in the empty silence thoughtfully. She stares into the partial glow of a door, contemplating whether it's truly her appearance, resolving internally on action. Grace, feeling deep emotions, flashes back to previous experiences, weighing their significance while hinting at a path she's unsure to take. Grace sits quietly, contemplating her path moving forward, marveling at the surroundings and the change within herself. It's noted that Grace's memories are hazy, and she's determined to clearly understand and own her situation entirely. Focus is becoming clear. Grace draws her hand into a fist, resolving to secure her new life. With ongoing resolve, she endeavors to make better use of her existing capabilities. Alone, she resolutely admits a truth she's facing, planning an approach without turning back, a choice that fills her entirely. An uncertainty grips through, but Grace affirms she won't forget how to love. Her path is illuminated by internal dreaming. Grace resolves to do her best and encourages herself to hang in there. She faces the future with determination to sustain. Intrigued, Grace spots something important, a ring, raising questions about its place and timing. Grace inspects a ring, observing that it's merely glass, not a gem, and finds it a bit tacky. Grace expresses a desire to remember something, noting that her memories don't work well, almost like a plan she forgot. Grace hears the name Sally and struggles to recall who Sally is. She then remembers a blonde maid, recognizing Sally as the friendly maid she knows. Sally enters, apologizing for her intrusion to Grace. Sally informs Grace about the health supplements she brought for her, and Grace acknowledges that she has been taking them, expressing a moment of forgetfulness. Grace reflects on forgetting many things lately, and Sally mentions concern from the master, reminding Grace to take care of herself. Grace ponders if there is something in the supplements, making her curious. She asks Sally about the supplements, to which Sally vaguely answers that they are for her health. Grace questions her trust in the supplements, speculating if someone might be trying to kill her. Grace asks Sally what the supplements are called, insisting on knowing their true identity. As Grace walks away, she thinks about the ring and the supplement, considering the situation. She questions the reality of the supplements, wondering if they are truly necessary. Grace watches the fire, contemplating the futility of seeking answers when her life seems threatened. She decides that dying is not an option and plans to escape to the kitchen. Moved by the delicious food, Grace resolves to eat lighter meals, pondering over portion control while admiring the hall. She observes her meal, thinking that the food looks fresh and appealing, considering it a feast fit for her. Sally compliments Grace on her improved complexion, offering cheerful approval. Grace feels pleased, acknowledging that Sally's praise seems genuine and effective. They discuss whether drinking water can improve skin, with Grace offering a doubtful remark and Sally citing hearsay. Grace recalls the subject of the prince's arrival being delayed, feeling informed by Sally's update. She considers indulgence briefly, knowing cookies are tempting yet likely to affect her weight. Grace feels conflicted about eating, not wanting to seem rude to the tailor by skimping on snacks. Reflecting on her reputation among the nobles, Grace accepts the labels of laziness and incompetence. She worries about adding to rumors that might spread if she treats the tailor poorly. Confused about the source of these rumors, she muses over her appeal and reputation. Determined to welcome the tailor properly, Grace tells Sally she won't eat, asking her to maintain high standards. Grace decides to hydrate before continuing with her day. A visitor greets Grace, who recognizes the arrival politely addressed to the Duchess. The visitor, bringing a catalog of clothes, presents it to Grace, fulfilling a prior request. Confused about current fashion trends, Grace flips through the catalog and finds one outfit appealing. Grace expresses her approval of a dress, pointing it out in the catalog. The visitor suggests that the chosen dress may not suit Grace, offering candid feedback. Grace hesitates, feeling the tension between personal preference and external opinions. Sally observes the situation with concern, anticipating Grace's reaction. Grace grapples with self-doubt, but counters it with determination, contemplating how her choices reflect on her identity. Resolute, she affirms her own decision, expressing a desire to take action her way. Grace dismisses the previous opinions, insisting that the dress selection is ultimately tacky, surprising both her maid and the tailor. The maid mentions that everything looks outdated, directing her comment to Grace, who seems engaged in thought. Grace faces a man at a table questioning him about someone else's employment. She wonders internally about the efficiency of certain hires. Grace listens intently to the man's explanation while considering her response. Meanwhile, the maid inquires softly if everything is all right. Concerned about her disconnection from the main house, Grace acknowledges needing help with her wardrobe. She expresses her surprise at the recommendation of an expensive dress when she only wanted something comfortable. Grace reflects on her recent actions as part of a larger plan to stir rumors using people in the annex. The maid and another woman whisper about the nature of Grace's intentions, suggesting the spread of rumors. The narrative suggests that soon other employees will inquire about the tailor, continuing the spread of Grace's scheme through Sally's response. Grace passionately demands new clothes that suit her, overriding an earlier suggestion. She emphasizes urgency to the maid attending her, who is startled by the command. A scene of silence captures the maid's bewilderment at Grace's intense insistence, highlighting her unexpected reaction. Grace contemplates Sally's behavior, speculating that being a common stock maid places her in an awkward position. She doubts if her plan will work but feels it's worth trying. Grace decides on calling a different tailor for immediate needs. The maid enthusiastically agrees to make the necessary arrangements. A man seated nearby expresses frustration over the resources used. He seems overwhelmed by the situation, pleading for understanding from Grace. Grace responds lightly, mentioning that his concern seems misplaced and unexpected. The man is confused by her relaxed stance. A light-hearted moment passes as Grace smiles, suggesting it's absurd to think of things going any other way than planned. She brushes off past complications humorously. During a contemplative pause, the scene shifts as Grace acknowledges feeling vulnerable beyond her usual poise. Grace takes a moment to compose herself, exiting a room to gather her thoughts elsewhere. She reassures herself of recent decisions, encouraging herself to stay composed and firm in her resolve. Determined, Grace heads back swiftly, focusing her mind entirely on the tasks ahead. Grace harbors a resolute plan to alter her life by losing weight, seeking a divorce, and living long. But this determination falters quickly due to upcoming distractions. Despite her plans, a table full of tempting treats lures Grace into comfort eating. These indulgences pose a challenge to her goals. Caught off guard by the abundance, Grace politely thanks for the preparation, hinting at feeling overwhelmed by the gesture. The server beams at Grace's appreciation, mentioning the desserts were chosen for their current popularity. Grace, pondering over the offering, questions whether such indulgences are necessary, while the server assures her it's meant as a comfort for her. Grace expresses her fondness for coffee, whimsically entertained by its trendy appeal, deciding to partake despite initial hesitation. The server expresses delight at Grace's enjoyment, feeling pleased to have chosen something she appreciates. Grace displays a visible reaction of joy, but internally wonders if her smile could be misleading, as it might suggest she's overly pleased with the server. Grace dismisses the array of desserts by stating the refreshments are sufficient, aiming to maintain a balance in her approach. The server, taken aback, clarifies if he heard correctly due to Grace's unexpected restraint. Grace admits attempting weight loss, indirectly linking her decision to a previous experience with a tailor. She explains it's a health decision, all the while expressing genuine enjoyment of the coffee, subtly criticizing the negative implications of being overweight. Grace eats delicately, reflecting on dietary priorities while observing an unspoken understanding with her server. The server is depicted with an almost radiant satisfaction, his demeanor encouraging Grace to enjoy freely while justifying the situation. Grace, caught between her intentions and social interactions, wishes she had time to selfishly please herself as the pleasing scenario unfolds in front of her. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure appears, seemingly engaged in his own secretive conversation, perhaps with relevance to Grace's life. Grace holds an awareness of peculiar tailors presented by Benjamin, alluding to an unusual selection process. She speculates on Benjamin's distracted state, which leads to irregular choices. Historical context offers insight into past behaviors related to high-status figures during accidents. A maid excitedly informs Grace of compelling news regarding a once-exiled tailor, hoping it will pique her interest. Grace recalls the tailor, unsurprised that drastic measures led to undesirable outcomes, maintaining a cautious perspective. The maid, bubbling with anticipation, exclaims about unbelievable new developments, leaving Grace in suspense. A scene shows an individual cloaked in disguise, harboring thoughts regarding something precious being taken from him, linked to Grace's fate. Grace finds solace in serene surroundings, tempering her anxious curiosity about the next unveiling events. In her reflection, Grace, comforted by a friend, expresses mild surprise at a recent revelation. Contemplating her hands, Grace ponders whether past actions may have drawn unnecessary attention while trying to remain composed. An unexpected atmospheric shift brings introspection, as if forewarned by Grace's deepened awareness. Grace moves forward, undercover, questioning her steps as she ventures cautiously across a grand corridor. Standing stylishly, she commends the suitability of her attire, leaving no doubts about her confidence. Unexpectedly encountering Benjamin, Grace remarks on the coincidence, masking her inner suspicions. Grace muses on the curious nature of repeatedly meeting Benjamin, hypothesizing about hidden intentions. Grace feels confident about her clothes and assures herself that everything is fine about her appearance. She seems content with the outfit she's chosen. A man compliments Grace on how well the choice suits her, expressing admiration. He wonders how difficult it must be choosing the right attire for every event. Grace and the man take a leisurely walk together. Grace confirms the pleasant weather has encouraged her recent outings. She is asked if it's challenging to meet every day. The man mentions his plan to plant new saplings in the garden, suggesting a peach tree as Grace supposedly likes peaches. He engages her in planning for the garden's future. Grace responds by reminiscing on peaches. The man seems surprised, questioning her current preference for them. The conversation shifts to reflect on changing tastes and opinions. Grace sharply replies with a no, but diplomatically adds that she'd still enjoy the peaches if shared with her. She lightly suggests that a peach tart would be a delightful treat. The man's enthusiasm brightens at the idea of a peach tart, and Grace notes that it would indeed be nice. Yet, there's a lingering thought of indulgence and restraint. Grace shares her dilemma about needing to lose weight. The man sympathizes, acknowledging the unfortunate situation of enjoying food but having constraints. The man inquires if Grace loves flowers, to which she admits her fondness, even though she's not adept at identifying them. She explains her limited knowledge of flowers. Grace reflects on how not knowing flower names makes it impossible for her to discern them. The man understands and seems to have never considered this aspect. An outsider criticizes Grace's distant demeanor, suggesting it's distasteful. The person, driven by frustration, seeks calm yet is visibly disturbed by the situation. Grace is in her room, and despite not fully understanding the situation, she acknowledges a moment of realization or surprise. It's a moment of introspection and wondering. Sally comments on how Grace's blouse has become loose, suggesting a noticeable change in her physique. Grace seems to have lost some weight, prompting this observation. Grace mentions that her changed diet could be responsible for her weight loss. She recognizes the simple act of adjusting her diet has had significant effects on her body. Grace contemplates the potential weight loss, considering if shedding about 6 to 8 kilograms is possible. Sally reminds her of an upcoming event that day. Grace admits she forgot about the event and wishes for a moment of peace, reflecting on her recent busy life. Her thoughts are filled with fleeting reflections. Suddenly, Grace discovers something unexpected, raising her curiosity. She questions the unfamiliar sight, intrigued by its presence and what it signifies. Overwhelmed by disbelief, Grace processes the unexpected discovery. She silently acknowledges how surprising this new revelation is. The reality of not considering certain problems before now sinks in, and Grace reflects on this revelation with an understanding that was previously lacking. The man appears thoughtful, symbolizing reflection or consideration about a topic weighing on his mind. There's an aura of gentleness and contemplation surrounding him. Grace is struck with disbelief and overwhelmed by this new realization, her heart pounding with the unexpected revelation she's just encountered. Grace ponders whether the signs she's noticed could be actions attributed to the gardener. Her thoughts are an internal soundboard for speculations and understanding. Sally prompts Grace to act on the situation, encouraging her with words of support. Grace processes these suggestions, her mind racing with possibilities. Grace reflects on her recent realizations during a contemplative moment. Sally's voice breaks her reverie, reminding her of the importance of staying grounded amidst discoveries. Grace acknowledges her role and responsibilities, deciding to go in early. There's a resolution in her tone, steering towards taking defined actions on her own terms. Grace is seen observing the scenery, indications of contemplative activity surrounding her presence. A conversation with Sally evolves, discussing recent observations and realizations. Grace reassures Sally that there's nothing to worry about with the weight loss, attributing it to recent changes in her lifestyle. She remains confident in her health journey. Sally questions if Grace has been affected by recent events, sensing an underlying tension. Grace wonders about the changes since she hasn't been visiting the study as often. Grace acknowledges the truth in Sally's observations. She contemplates the unfamiliarity and changes since the last visit to a particular study room. Grace reflects on her past, remembering a time when avoiding the outside world was common. Her original self found comfort in spending time with books during youthful days. Current Grace prefers moving around instead of staying confined, realizing the detrimental impact stationary living has on her mood. Movement offers her relief. Grace considers heading to the study, asking Sally to bring her some tea there. She decides to embrace new habits while maintaining a bit of comfort from before. Sally agrees to the request, setting about to fetch the tea. There is also a wonder from Grace about the current location of her diary, sparking curiosity. Grace experiences a surreal internal moment, acknowledging how certain aspects of life have dramatically changed. Time passes, and she contemplates the shift within herself. Sally enters the frame with a smile, perhaps offering amusement at a shared understanding. Grace feels a revelatory connection with past and present encompassing her experience. Upon reaching the doors to the study, Grace is met with conflicted memories, realizing some of them might not be as significant as she once thought. Grace debates between dismissing unnecessary concerns and opening the door to the study, determined to focus on the task with reverence for the space she's about to enter. Surprised by the size of the study, Grace finds herself perplexed at how different it looks now. Initial impressions had led her to expect something much smaller. Grace takes a moment to appreciate the scenery visible from the study. It's a realization of beauty that prompts a brief pause to soak in her surroundings. Sally arrives with the tea, acknowledging the weight Grace has endured. Their interaction is one of politeness and attentiveness to Grace's needs. Grace thanks Sally for bringing the tea, requesting for it to be placed in a specific area. The moment is gentle, depicting a seamless servant-master relationship. The tea reflects a gentle swirling pattern, symbolizing a calming, soothing presence within Grace's current environment, highlighting Grace's penchant for tranquility. Grace expresses her simple appreciation for the tea. Her acknowledgement is tentative, tying in the visual and aromatic pleasure the tea brings. Sally shares the recent trend of flower teas, suggesting there's an upscale trend she's noticed. Grace listens, acknowledging the social implications of preferences briefly. Grace politely declines the suggestion for desserts, recalling the impact on weight gain. Her decision is portrayed as one mindful and aware of personal health commitments. Grace reassures Sally, explaining she'll remain at the study until mealtime, conveying her intent to continue her studies in peace and tranquility. Sally wishes Grace a pleasant reading, her well wishes grounding the scene in warmth and consideration. The atmosphere remains serene and pleasant throughout. Suddenly, Grace remembers her longing to find a diary, reigniting a sense of urgency and purpose to her exploration within the study's accessible wonders. Grace is about to pinpoint exact memories. Physical markers within the room guide her in rediscovering hidden aspects as she contemplates the clues before her. Grace recalls distinct places she's familiar with in the room, mapping out where her attention should be focused. She's intrigued by the sofa and desk remembered fondly. Her search leads to a drawer that fails to reveal the desired items. Her determination does not waver, even in the absence of compelling evidence of the diary's origin. An envelope catching her attention leads to a realization. Although it doesn't contain her diary, it piques curiosity. She notes how the situation unfolds with a bit of surprise. Grace reflects on the surprising nature of such discoveries, contemplating the vastness of what's still unknown about her surroundings and what it holds. She notes that it's clearly a diary, setting the context for her curiosity. Observing how the diary was hidden, she questions why it was concealed, pondering the secrets it might hold. The diary in her hands reads, "Grace's Hidden Secret Diary," enticing her further as its secrecy is highlighted. The diary reveals entries starting from after the wedding, but it seems like Grace didn't write consistently, providing an irregular glimpse into the past. She reflects that the entries seem more like brief notes rather than details revealing Grace's true emotions, indicating the diary lacks depth. Yet, she finds it strange and important, wanting to figure it out. As she reads, it's disclosed that Grace desired a child but was unsure due to complicated reasons, hinting at internal struggles and desires. She reads about Grace's fear of the future and feels discomfort thinking about the implications of these fears, showing her unease with Grace's situation. She thinks about wanting to unravel Grace's emotions more as she holds the diary close, looking for deeper insights and hidden truths. Continuing, she senses a lack of love in the diary entries, suspecting that Grace's relationship might have been void of warmth. If honest, this truth feels stark. Reflecting on the dreams Grace had of being loved, she understands it was merely a delusion. The weight of Grace's lonely aspirations becomes clear as she sees herself in a library, surrounded by books yet burdened by the truth. Her emotions are a confusing swirl of realization and empathy, mixed together in a messy way, as she contemplates Grace's difficult journey. Grace had fragile, heart-shaped dreams of love that never materialized, and the sadness of it stings as she muses over these lost dreams and possibilities. Two maids suggest doing that, to which Grace simply responds with a contemplative sound. This implies a ritual or task they all recognize. Sally, one of the maids, enthusiastically suggests Grace visit an upcoming village festival to lift her spirits. Sally tries to brighten Grace's mood by mentioning the festival. Grace doesn't immediately respond to Sally's suggestion of visiting the festival, leaving Sally waiting with hopeful anticipation. Sally continues about the masquerade theme, emphasizing food as a potential draw. Grace seems unresponsive, maintaining a silence that speaks volumes, as if pondering whether the effort is worth it. Sally stands there with hopeful eyes, looking to see if her suggestion sparks any hint of enthusiasm in Grace, trying earnestly to encourage her. Grace considers the suggestion amidst Sally and a butler's presence, feeling a weight on her from their concerned gazes, suggesting unspoken worries. As Sally begins to tear up, she mutters something about living comfortably and dying, when she suddenly realizes by calling out Sally's name that she is touched by the maid's sincerity. Sally cries, worried for Grace's well-being. She explains that it hurts her to feel unable to help Grace, expressing her support. Grace reassures Sally that she's been very helpful despite feeling emotionally disconnected from her surroundings. She apologizes for her withdrawn behavior. Grace smilingly suggests that they eat, using humor to lighten the mood, showing a moment of levity in their serious conversation. Sally offers to make soup and inquires whether Grace would prefer consommé or potage, indicating her willingness to cater to Grace's preferences and comfort. In the kitchen, the chef consistently prepares consommé daily for Grace, ensuring it is always ready and available, reflecting their dedication to her well-being. Grace, feeling a twinge of guilt, acknowledges the special efforts made for her, and quietly expresses her apology, feeling undeserving. Sally tries to assure Grace, noting her tendency to apologize frequently. She appreciates Grace's kind-hearted nature, perceiving her apology as an endearing quality. Grace considers whether to take a walk, feeling the urge to step outside despite her earlier reluctance. Her reflections lead her to remove her shoes and touch the cool floor, noticing the calming sensation. While revisiting the diary, Grace senses something odd about the advice she was given to start a journal, feeling someone else's influence within the pages. The suggestion to keep a diary appears like advice from someone else, prompting Grace to wonder who might have persuaded her to document her thoughts and feelings. As Grace turns the page, she's curious about what the next part might reveal, ready to uncover more hidden truths and narratives. Grace notes the empty pages that follow incomplete entries, contemplating the fragmented nature of the recorded events. She sits and considers someone had mentioned that keeping a diary could be insightful. Still puzzled, Grace thinks about the significance of the diary entries. She imagines herself in deep thought, questioning its importance in her current life. Grace hears a soft knock and glances toward the noise, peering to see someone at the door, hinting her moment of quiet is about to end. She wonders what to do now that they've made eye contact since the person outside seems intent on grabbing her attention. Grace decides to see who's there, pulling back the curtain slightly. Her concern is evident as she lightly asks from a distance if everything is all right. A young man standing outside, respectful, asks if she can spare a moment with casual earnestness, eagerly engaging with Grace. The man, restricted from entering the annex, admits his limitations to Grace. He seems genuinely apologetic about the boundaries. He explains about the small rock he tossed, saying it was meant to be discreet enough that only if she was awake she would hear it, illustrating his thoughtful consideration. A bit embarrassed, he admits hoping to catch her attention since she hasn't been out for walks lately, mentioning his interest in her well-being. Grace acknowledges that her mood has been hard to shake, contemplating aloud why she too hasn't ventured out lately. She questions the rule about the annex. With a small slip, he clarifies that the annex is off-limits to outsiders, even to the extent of excluding himself unless she personally allows it. Grace processes this, now curious about the extent of her own rules, beginning to connect the dots in her mind. Surprised, Grace realizes she might have inadvertently restricted him, her internal monologue questioning the implications of her actions. The understanding dawns on her that she, of all people, had placed such heavy restrictions on someone as esteemed as a duke, a realization that leaves her astounded. Grace contemplates her thoughts, acknowledging a sense of going crazy, as it feels almost true to her. She questions whether someone is imagining things again, with a suggestion that someone might be pretending to sleep. A man suggests someone is likely really asleep, noting that he doesn't want to stay up all night just talking. Grace observes the man, noting that he looks so serious even without his glasses. The man questions Grace's ability, asking if she knows how to dance. He refers to the mask festival, where everyone hides their identities with masks. Grace expresses surprise, asking how someone can think she's capable of dancing to the accompaniment of the orchestra at the festival. She has a sudden realization, questioning if she's truly surprised, marked with an exclamation. Grace urgently calls out to the doctor, telling him to stop, while the doctor assures her that he's all right. With determination, Grace responds affirmatively, deciding they should proceed and go. Grace enthusiastically suggests going to the festival. She emphasizes that it is that specific mask festival they should attend. A man addresses someone as Your Majesty, hinting at a formal interaction. He observes that the other individual looks happy, marked with an expression of realization. A conversation ensues about missing someone, with the notion of setting a family free being mentioned. Someone reflects on the last festival, asking if the speaker is planning to attend with a certain person this year. An individual inquires about showing someone a grand act, considering it important. Grace balances disbelief with excitement about attending the mask festival. She muses on the meaning behind real joy and questions if it's her imagination again. Benjamin, wearing a mask, contemplates giving Grace a gift, seen as someone at home enjoys Grace's delicacies. Grace thinks to herself about enduring the situation, pushing onward. She contemplates reaching a decision, pondering the potential effects if she decides to attend the festival. Grace moves with purpose, wondering what's driving her decision. There's confidence that the marriage arranged by the royal family is proceeding well, marked by clasped hands. Grace reflects on the trouble she almost encountered, considering the possibility that Benjamin's interest might be rekindled. She reassures herself that his motives are to show loyalty to the royal family. She wonders if the situation ends with someone going crazy over Aria, causing a scene and leading to kidnapping. Amidst her musings, Grace acknowledges Benjamin as her husband but sees him as a man driven to madness by love. While considering the imminent transition to becoming an ex-husband, Grace admits she's emotionally exhausted and decides to sleep. Grace awakens feeling lighter, believing she can start exercising again. Greeting Sally in the morning, Grace notices Sally is busy and inquires if there's something significant happening. Sally responds cheerfully, explaining that they are quite busy preparing for the mask festival, sharing a courteous morning greeting. Retracing events, Grace and Sally discuss a dress that must be ordered in advance due to its complexity. Sally notes the pressing preparations for the festival. Grace examines the dress, remarking that it looks a bit thick and wonders if it will be too hot. With excitement, Sally encourages Grace to try it on, explaining it offers a unique opportunity rarely given to guests. Grace questions what it is and reflects on Sally's cheerful expression, perhaps hinting at something suspicious. Grace examines a gift, pondering its purpose and implications in silence. Sally responds to Grace, hesitating slightly and maintaining a demeanor of assurance. An urgent scenario unfolds with a carriage scene, hinting at an escort, as figures move in the evening. Although the scene holds tension, Aria's internal thoughts express fear despite a semblance of calmness. Grace's curiosity is piqued by the concealed nature of the gift, wondering about its significance. Sitting on her bed, Grace asks if it's acceptable for her to wear the dress. Sally assures her that it's crafted especially for her. Grace perceives the outfit and questions excitedly if it's something she recognizes from a story. Sally affirms it was indeed by coincidence, giggling at the serendipity. Grace questions why the windows are covered, observing with quiet curiosity. She suspects something is amiss, secretly questioning if His Majesty instructed Sally to say it was acquired by chance. The narration describes a scene of unexpected joy, revealing a glimmer of excitement hidden within. Sally, confused, calls out to Grace, observing her departure, perhaps on her own significant mission. A male character is seen building something as he expresses relief that Grace is there. He mentions seeing it in a magic book and questions if Grace is aware of it. Another male character stands below a window, expressing gratitude while mentioning the noise's cause, questioning if he's being too loud. Grace, standing inside a room, is told not to exert herself and ignore the noise from outside. Saplia appears, smiling and saying that everything aligned perfectly. She mentions watching for months and shares her excitement about finding something. Grace, surprised and confused, questions Saplia's statement, asking what she means by that and expressing bewilderment. Saplia narrates how something was only seen once a year, and it was lucky they successfully hunted it after a few months. Grace gestures, asking Saplia to wait, clearly needing clarification about something. Grace mentions feeling oddly tired today, touching her head as she thinks aloud. Deep in thought, Grace muses about being worried and how it's making her feel anxious as she reflects on the situation. Saplia reassures Grace with a gentle response, seemingly relieved to discuss the topic more openly. Grace, considerate of others, wants to give a gift to the knights who prepared something and seeks advice on what to give and how. Saplia suggests that the knights would love to see Grace wearing a specific cloak while going on a date with the master. She proposes a change of outfit for this idea. Grace questions the timing, expressing her surprise as Saplia confirms the urgency and tells her the master awaits. Walking together, Saplia encourages Grace not to worry, indicating they're heading somewhere important. Saplia, standing by gracefully, reminds Grace to choose from the wardrobe, adding suggestions for the attire. Grace acknowledges the outfit's looseness but prioritizes timing over adjustment for now. Saplia asks Grace to be careful as she wishes her a safe journey, agreeing to her departure. Outside, Grace greets an important figure with formal politeness, acknowledging their presence. A voice fondly addresses Grace as "my lady," signaling familiarity and respect. Another figure, elegantly dressed, reveals they've been waiting for Grace, adding a touch of anticipation. Benny reassures Grace that she is not late, complimenting her timing by admitting he arrived early. Benny hints at a truth, keeping a little mystery while smiling at Grace with a suggestion. Grace, curious about Benny's intentions, wonders what is up his sleeve as she observes him closely. Grace reflects on her conversation with Benny, feeling a complexity of emotions, both comfort and tension. Benny shares an anecdote about his honest hobbies, stating it's not extravagant like others. Grace listens attentively. Grace inquires about examples of Benny's hobbies, intrigued by his mysterious persona. Benny offers an endearing nickname suggestion one might use for him, hinting at familiarity and closeness. Grace is slightly daunted by the nickname Darling, but agrees to call him Benny as they stand together. Grace, examining Benny, thinks about his peculiarity. He stands out, evoking curiosity in her. Walking side by side, Grace perceives Benny as an eccentric individual, her thoughts tinged with mild amusement. Benny asks Grace about experiencing her first festival in the capital, indicating the significance of the event. Grace admits she's not fond of outdoor activities, revealing her lack of participation in festivals even at home. Benny explains that the festival is arranged by the temple and it would be difficult to enjoy back home due to fewer temples, urging Grace to appreciate the moment here. Grace internally contemplates Benny's connection to the temple festival, reflecting on his motives and comments. Benny continues discussing the festival, mentioning reasons people attend, like illusions and attraction. As they walk together under a dusky sky, Grace recounts a fairy tale related to the festival, one her father shared with her and her sister, evoking fond memories. Benny remarks on Grace's apparent close relationship with her sister, showing interest in her family dynamics. Grace responds, indicating she seldom talks about family but always positively when she does. Grace's internal thoughts reveal a lack of strong family memories, adding complexity to her family's dynamic discussion. Grace reflects on the scant memories involving her family, mainly revolving around Grace. Grace, slightly startled, addresses Benny as Your Excellency, capturing the moment's formality with a touch of surprise. Benny decides it's best to accompany Grace from that point onward, emphasizing a protective gesture. Benny humorously remarks about the festival with Grace nearby, displaying lightheartedness. Benny ensures Grace is comfortable, guiding her through the festival crowd while maintaining gentle care. Grace is astonished by the variety of foods displayed, overwhelmed by the choices available at the festival. Benny reassures Grace that little indulgence at the fair is perfect. The atmosphere pulses with lively festival energy. Grace mentions that Benny's idea of buying food is practical and she agrees. Benny offers to fetch some refreshments. Benny promises to return soon, leaving Grace to enjoy the festival's ambience briefly. Benny encourages Grace to take her time and explore the festival freely, assuring his quick return and leaving Grace with peaceful anticipation. Grace is left pondering Benny's enigmatic statements, feeling somewhat intrigued by his elusive remarks. Grace encounters a group of children playing, evoking a sense of curiosity and engagement. A child asks Grace's purpose, sparking a brief interaction, opening a dialogue between Grace and the playful group. Grace expresses playful curiosity, engaging with the child, likely leading to a delightful exchange. Grace acknowledges finding something intriguing, captivated by the joyful simplicity around her. Grace considers if she should buy something, debating between an internal sense of duty or spontaneous generosity. Pondering over actions motivated by pity or kindness, Grace weighs her options silently. Grace seeks out the children's guardian or teacher, displaying concern for their supervision. Grace is informed by the children of their teacher's presence, leaving her to contemplate their situation and inquire further. Grace reflects on the thought of potential exploitation of the children, concerned about their welfare. A teacher approaches, greeting Grace kindly, and adding a seamless layer of warmth to the encounter. A woman inquires if the other is the manager of the orphanage. The other woman clarifies that she is not the manager. She explains she is just an ordinary teacher, comforting a child standing near her. The concerns about the state of the orphanage linger, questioning if there is embezzlement happening among the staff. One woman ponders who could be in charge of the misuse of funds, particularly focusing on the orphanage's director. She feels troubled by the situation, wondering what she might do to help. Contemplating solutions, she considers purchasing the company, but dismisses it, realizing it wouldn't be a long-term fix. She muses over whether she should sponsor them as the Duchess. She wonders if there's a method to support the orphanage without directly owning it, pondering potential ways to assist financially. As she walks, she questions her next steps and thinks about the most meaningful way to assist. She turns to ask the teacher for her name. The teacher, standing with children, responds her name is Cleta. The atmosphere seems casual as they engage in conversation. Cleta repeats her name, confirming it. The other woman acknowledges her, perhaps familiarizing herself with Cleta. With a sense of determination, the woman decides to follow her heart and take decisive action, treating it as a task of grace. She asks Cleta if it would be okay to help with all the processes involved, implying her willingness to be deeply involved. Inside her thoughts, Cleta wonders if this stranger might be trying to deceive her, questioning the woman's intentions. In a chibi style, Cleta introduces her husband, Benny, to the woman. They seem to be in a friendly introduction, sharing pleasantries. The woman explains she has bought materials for soap making and some candy for the children. She appears to be quite prepared. Benny hands out candy, and a child thanks him, expressing their gratitude for the treat. She hesitantly asks if Benny might not join them, posing it as an inquiry rather than a demand. Cleta and the woman begin working on a project together, with the woman directing her on gently pouring something into a mold. Looking into the basket, there are materials for making soap. Cleta notes the variety of colors, and they discuss the significance of flowers. Amazed, Cleta expresses admiration for the woman's skill with handicrafts. She seems genuinely impressed by the craftsmanship. The woman downplays her talent, describing it merely as a hobby. Yet the skill level suggests it's a bit more than that. She teases that despite compliments, flattery won't yield any benefits. It's a light-hearted response to Cleta's admiration. Cleta is awestruck by the luxurious appearance of the product. She estimates its worth at a high market price. The woman proposes selling the item at a slightly lower price, showing a keen sense of realistic pricing despite its appearance. Cleta is shocked by the suggested price, believing it might be too steep. There's a debate on whether it's justified. Convincingly, the woman argues that the price remains quite reasonable, countering Cleta's doubts. As if predicting the outcome, the woman reassures Cleta that the soap will sell out. Rich-looking gentlemen compare the soap, noting its freshness and fragrance. They inquire humorously if the woman could sell them some product too. They become captivated by its beauty, exclaiming its prettiness as they continue to appreciate it. Surrounded by children, the woman joyfully states they can participate too, inviting them to be part of the endeavor. Cleta observes and remarks aloud how much the kids enjoy the activity, reflecting on their enthusiasm. Puzzled about the woman, Cleta questions who she is and marvels at her ability to sell so effectively. Cleta is approached and asked about what she is selling, to which she replies that it's soap. She proudly presents the soap, explaining it's the result of their hard work for the festival. The woman's voice encourages Cleta, suggesting they create a legend in her hometown, emphasizing legacy. With passion, the woman inspires Cleta, promising endeavors that bring memories and joy to those who come. Amongst the chatter, others mention that the soap grants wishes, further enhancing its allure. The crowd is convinced by the stories and decides to purchase the soap, driven by its charm and promise. Later, the woman reflects quietly while walking away, possibly content or contemplating the day's events. With excitement bubbling inside, she acknowledges feeling exhilarated from the day's activities. Feeling proud of their accomplishment, the woman is curious about a lingering, undefined sensation. There's an unsettling feeling, prompting her to leave the scene and head home, still pondering her emotions. She senses something ominous, doubting if she noticed something during the evening. Another person appears, causing her to be startled, resulting in a minor accident. Disoriented on the ground, she struggles with the unexpected turn of events. The voice expresses surprise at the collision, hinting at the other person's size and inattentiveness. The woman, caught off guard, refrains from retaliating, sensing the futility of arguing back. The interaction leaves her anxious as shadows loom around, heightening the tension. Fearing for her safety, she seeks to escape the unsettling presence of these strangers. An urgent plea for help escapes her lips as she stumbles forward, grappling with the situation. A person approaches, expressing disdain for her lack of balance, observing the unfolding scene with indifference. Another stranger speculates if her apparent distress might stem from inebriation, questioning her state with curiosity. Grace notices the hat on the ground, focusing on its presence. She wonders if it's time for them to leave. Grace and the man reflect on how difficult the walking is for her, and he offers to carry her. Grace remembers the touch of his hand, which leaves her shocked and longing for him. Feeling overwhelmed by her emotions, she retreats into the room and finds herself becoming sad. Grace obsessively thinks about the alley and questions why she's having so many thoughts. She feels joy at first but then realizes she must do something and wonders what that might be. Grace calls out for Sally to check if she's in the vicinity. Sally confirms her presence and Grace asks her to bring the ledger. Grace feels a little better when doing something productive. As she goes through the ledger, Grace recalls Benjamin's words about entering the ledger 2 years ago and recognizes that night. Startled, Grace realizes she made a huge mistake. She frets over what she did, wondering if he let it go, and decides not to dwell on it to avoid feeling more depressed. Grace resolves to clear the ledger and find extra pages to fix the error. She decides to check the garden and aims to keep it small so it remains manageable. Another decision she makes is to buy some land, which impresses Sally, noting how good it would be. Sally informs Grace about a gift sent by Her Excellency, sparking interest in Grace. Grace meets the masked man who sends a gift, and she recalls the night and 2 years passed with him. Sally replies affirmatively when asked about the gift, piquing Grace's curiosity about its nature. Grace wonders about the gift's appearance and determines to check it out. Observing the array of small flowers, Grace notes their colors and how they're suited for a present. Grace concludes that the flowers perfectly embody the idea of pretty. Curious about their purpose, Grace asks what should be done with the flowers. Sally comments that they resemble cookies, showing the actual gift. Surprised, Grace inquires about the homemade look of the cookies, suggesting they could be a treat. Grace expresses her perfect understanding of the cookies' purpose and acknowledges the special effort put into making them. Determined to follow up, Grace confirms she'll check it out. Sally responds positively to Grace's confirmation. Grace expresses her wish for another favor, pondering over what she wants to ask. Grace walks down the street, wondering if she should visit a shop, planning her next steps. She asks for the cookies, confirming what she needs to do next, viewing it as an opportunity. Surprised by the situation she's encountered, Grace questions the kind of competition being run. Grace inquires about a specific detail related to the situation, curious if it's what she's thinking. She reflects on the importance of social reputation in divorces and recalls reading it before. Considering the masquerade and the events that follow, Grace contemplates visiting the garden to avoid further distractions. Grace wonders if the children enjoyed the cookies she left for them. Grace explains the use of tea bags, having created them using muslin cloth. Observing the overseas tea leaves, Grace mentions the various teas they usually have, adding that commoners don't enjoy it as much. Grace explains the high turnover rate, making it difficult for commoners to enjoy leisurely tea. She outlines the effort and many tea sets required for preparation, highlighting why it's rare to have such leisure. Illustrating the tea bag's usage, Grace states that brief dipping is sufficient for luxurious tea. Her companion questions whether it's possible to enjoy such a treat so easily. Grace assures her they can make it work, explaining that it's already resolved. Grace smiles confidently, reinforcing that challenges are resolved, and receives affirmation from her companion. Regarding tea ingredients, Grace shares her knowledge of a tea plantation and proposes selling from the orphanage store. She suggests advertising the store's proceeds to support the orphanage children, expecting it to attract buyers. Her companion inquires about staffing concerns. Turning to her companion, Grace assures them with a plan for staffing. She reveals her intention to hire the mothers of the children, addressing the staffing issue creatively. A young girl nervously begins to express her confusion, her voice trailing off as she wonders aloud how something happened. The girl, now more composed, questions how someone could have known such significant information, specifically about the mothers of the orphanage kids. Another woman, standing confidently, starts to explain, saying that if the question is about how she knew, it's quite simple. She points out the obviousness of the situation, noting that the children are too well-groomed to be only cared for by an orphanage. The first girl wonders if the children are aware of their mothers, pondering whether they might wish to see them. The confident woman explains that naturally, everyone desires to be with their loved ones. A kettle boils as one woman compliments the other on her observant nature, expressing gratitude for her insight. The woman in the cloak talks about the dire financial situation of the orphanage, implying that mothers might be donating for their children since the place depends on more support. Observing the flame under the kettle, she points out that without new donations, their troubles will persist, as they need to establish a source of income soon. Walking alongside the other woman, she reflects on how the mothers want to stay connected, suggesting that employment for them could solve many issues. The younger woman reveals that someone once ran away, leaving as soon as they realized the orphanage wasn't profitable and took all its funds. She expresses gratitude for being informed and considers hiring all the mothers, noting the size of the building is much larger than needed for the number of kids. A discussion unfolds about transforming the empty parts of the orphanage into something beneficial, with an enthusiastic agreement about the potential. With excitement, the suggestion is made to reduce business costs by employing mothers close to their kids. Mention is made of a raw material that could be produced due to recent talks, suggesting it would be beneficial once the land is improved. Reassurance is given that soon a blessing will make the land perfect, ensuring top-quality tea leaves in the next few years. A request is made to the mothers to see if they're interested in working there, with immediate action promised. The scene shifts to the fact that the orphanage has 13 kids, but only one mother has accepted the working proposal, leaving someone shocked. A feeling of understanding is expressed, but it's noted that unless all mothers agree, it could be useless. Concerns arise about divorce affecting the business, emphasizing the need for cooperation and future planning. The internal debate about confronting the orphanage head is considered dangerous due to potential consequences with Benjamin. Lying contemplatively, she questions why the proposal wasn't more appealing or wonders if it's just difficult for the mothers. Determination grows to offer an irresistible proposition, with a maid interrupting the thought process. An idea surfaces about creating crafts from flowers received from the master, revealing enthusiasm. Curiosity swirls around the intended recipient of a thoughtful gift made from those flowers. The maid, Sally, hesitates, holding back a question about who the gift is for, as she's unsure how to approach it. Observing the madam's excitement, Sally notes how unusual it is for her to be this eager. A request is made by the madam to prepare the gift quickly, reflecting her eager anticipation. Sally internally debates, feeling a mix of trust and caution but still respecting the madam's wishes. Doubt lingers if there's someone outside who deserves such a thoughtful gesture, yet trust remains. Sally concludes that there is indeed someone worthy of such a gift, maintaining her utmost trust in the madam's intentions. A question is posed whether the lady feels well, transitioning from architecture to an ominous energy lurking nearby. The atmosphere shifts to night, casting a mysterious aura over recent happenings. Shifting to another place, someone steps out early in the morning, indicating a struggle to move forward. A discovery is made outside involving a sealed letter, sparking curiosity about its contents. Relieved it isn't a prank, she declares her intent to act on the letter, hoping it brings some liberation. Holding on to the letter tightly, emotions blend between hope and fear as she heads toward a decision. A letter reveals thoughtful insights into a day spent with Lady Catherine, emphasizing joy found in small achievements. The letter continues, sharing a child's accomplishment, asking for praise at their next meeting. Encouragement is emphasized, seeking acknowledgement of Ash's success to boost happiness. Noticing the absence of business-related discussion, the reader appreciates the gentle nature of the letter. Determinately, she resolves to act upon the letter's contents, fueled by its encouragement. A sense of tranquility envelopes the area, with the letter serving as comfort to ease the turmoil of the day. An optimistic note accompanies a declaration, marking the beginning of something significant. Cleta appears pleased, holding a letter, reflecting quietly on her intentions. A future hope is expressed by the younger woman, desiring to return to the orphanage, pictured with the children beside her. Grace holds a teacup, pondering over the importance of achieving a miracle for someone, considering how it will impact her journey. A delicate moment unfolds between Benjamin and Aria, amidst a backdrop of roses, as Aria softly acknowledges his presence. Aria stands surrounded by a shimmering light, with her name resonating, marking a significant revelation. Before the meeting between Grace, Benjamin, and Aria occurred, the scene shifts to a few hours earlier. Grace stands in a modest room, confident and declaring that her task is now completed. Reflecting on her time at the orphanage, Grace expresses gratitude for the kindness shown by the women there, feeling increasingly at ease. Cleta greets Grace, informing her about a scheduled event, and they prepare to leave together. They discuss roasted tea, Grace revealing her lack of experience in making it. They walk through the hallway, with Cleta inquiring about the specifics of brewing tea, to which Grace responds with confidence. Observing numerous tea bags before them, Grace questions if their small team, including Cleta, can handle the workload. Grace describes the initial tea batch plan, intended for free distribution to a few restaurants in the capital, surprising Cleta, who worries about starting at a loss. Grace explains the idea of offering tea as a form of advertisement since unfamiliar products might not sell right away, sharing a smile with Cleta. Confidently, Grace assures herself that at least one place will respond positively to their new tea offering. Contemplating the chain of events, Grace envisions gripping the world where water and destiny intertwine, shaping her path. Grace stands in front of a carriage, mentally preparing herself, while a group of children exclaims in excitement over the evident scene. A character emphasizes that what is visible is far from being everything. To meet increased demand, Grace stresses the need to start working hard, indicating things will become busier once more restaurants accept them. Grace announces her plan to head to a workshop, seeking a companion who understands workshops, encouraging someone to join her. Mother Lily volunteers, wondering if it would be all right for her to accompany Grace. At various textile workshops, Grace and Mother Lily inspect and converse with a worker, marking their progress in visiting them all. Grace finds the visits ending more swiftly than expected, with Mother Lily expressing surprise at the lack of resistance, feeling anticlimactic. Mother Lily thought there'd be more opposition, like questioning the nature of their business as women, noting the ease observed thus far. Grace admits being unable to deny the situation, but she suggests that it might indicate their business's positive reception. As they continue walking, Grace inquires why Mother Lily chose the smallest workshop, despite the second one appearing nicer. Mother Lily reflects on her decision. Grace contemplates the potential awkwardness of revealing the leather lining of her cloak, withholding deeper reasons. Recognizing the workshop owner's expertise, she surmises they saw the cloak's value even as others missed it. Grace finds it hard to articulate her thoughts, as she mulls over the muslin fabric used at the workshop. Grace appreciates the high quality of muslin from the final workshop, emphasizing its fineness. She recognizes the need for such superior muslin, expressing her desire to collaborate with that specific workshop. Grace, now focused on nurturing a single workshop, feels content as everything begins to take shape. She reflects on witnessing a poignant scene with Benjamin and Aria. Her gaze flickers with deeper understanding, crafting a serene moment. Grace ponders Aria's profound attractiveness and the elegance Benjamin carries, seeing beauty in their bond. Wrapped in her cloak, she contrasts Aria's beauty with her own uniqueness, feeling distinct and introspective. As Grace contemplates, Benjamin addresses her as Madam, seeking her attention. Lyndon advises Grace that they should continue, prompting a brief pause before resuming their path. Benjamin expresses care for Grace, reminding her of his support, though she insists she's fine and has others with her. Grace assures Benjamin she doesn't require assistance, committing independently to her mission. A grim tension hangs, yet Grace assures herself of her journey and capabilities, reiterating her resolve. Carefully considering her actions, Grace acknowledges the subtleties in others, particularly Aria. Grace reflects on silence, noting inwardly that questions remain unasked. She seems lost in thought, absent-mindedly fiddling with her hair, pondering the surrounding silence and what it means. A character mentions a new discovery, referencing the wide world and its unexplored questions. Grace stands, confronting a scene that suggests a thoughtful pause. The dim environment adds to the contemplative atmosphere. Another character emphasizes keeping things secret, mentioning the need to stay quiet to ensure freedom. They stress the risks involved, highlighting the necessity of discretion to avoid consequences. Grace acknowledges her growing understanding of rules and strategies. She expresses feeling a mix of emotions, trying to make sense of her surroundings and comprehend her feelings that are conflicted yet determined. A grand castle looms over the scene, silhouetted by a vibrant sky. Grace appears to retreat to a quiet place, where she can gather her thoughts and find solace from the overwhelming situation. Grace silently confides her confusion as she sees someone familiar, hoping for a hint or guidance. Her mind races with unspoken words, while her surroundings fade slightly into the background. Reflecting on interactions, Grace notes her attempts to connect with different establishments. Out of several outreaches, only a minority responded, and the lack of response leaves her contemplating. Grace thinks about Cleta and remarks on a letter, realizing how well Cleta is doing. She acknowledges Grace's probable inability to actively engage in business due to prior commitments. Surprised, a woman shows urgency in processing unexpected news, particularly regarding Cleta's situation. She resolves to come for Cleta after completing some important tasks, noting her primary concerns. Grace reads something exhausting, focusing on understanding the implications. She questions the legitimacy of certain affairs, wondering about transparency and truth within what's presented. A cheerful maid expresses eagerness to arrange a chat for Grace, mentioning wanting to briefly talk with someone. She offers to prepare additional refreshments, ensuring Grace's comfort during the wait. Grace sits reflectively, considering organizing her environment to foster well-being. She resolves it's best to handle matters personally, debating whether more direct action might help her. The scene opens to a lush garden, where Grace is seen taking a reflective pause. The vibrant colors suggest tranquility, giving her space to ponder what lies ahead without distractions. In the garden, Grace meets Benjamin and initiates a conversation. She greets him, while he politely reciprocates, indicating a sense of familiarity between them in this serene setting. Grace assesses Benjamin's demeanor, noting its deceptive innocence. She resolves to remain cautious despite the appearance of kindness, determined not to let goodwill sway her resolve. Uncertain, Grace considers her feelings about a challenging decision related to Benjamin. She is hesitant to voice her thoughts due to past incidents, feeling trapped by resurfacing emotions. In an idealized memory, imagery suggests Benjamin's growing affection for Aria, hinting at developing feelings. Grace processes this thought, balancing between acceptance and rationality. While sipping tea, Grace challenges herself over the sincerity of relationships. She wonders about her own perceptions, pondering on honesty and what is truly needed to find peace. Grace declares a desire for separation with a composed demeanor, her expression blending resolve with uncertainty. Her straightforward approach leaves little room for ambiguity. Shocked by Grace's words, Benjamin struggles to comprehend. He queries whether he heard right, trying to grasp her motivations. Grace simply reiterates her initial statement persistently. With growing frustration, Grace feels a physical pain linked to emotional stress. She internally swears future silence, promising not to disrupt again, seeking closure and peace for both. Benjamin pleads, questioning why Grace would speak of such a matter. He appears emotionally overwhelmed, unable to process the full weight of her decision. Grace expresses concern, unsure of whether her actions caused another issue. Benjamin insists he would do anything for her, driven by a desire to meet her expectations. Laying down outside, Benjamin offers to change himself if appearance is an issue. Grace's silence leaves him worried about her acceptance, fostering his desperation. Resolutely, Benjamin proposes to disguise himself if his looks displease, as a plea for forgiveness forms in his eyes. His request is genuine, yearning for reassurance. Grace's eyes widen as Benjamin requests her not to abandon him. His earnestness is met with her contemplation, leaving her in a moment of indecision about their future. Grace experiences a fleeting vision of Benjamin intertwined with Aria, its significance haunting her. She realizes the gravity of her decision extends beyond mere words. Benjamin admits to recognizing his inadequacies. His acknowledgement implies a willingness to change, revealing vulnerability underneath his composed exterior. Tearfully, Benjamin reflects on Grace's consistent thoughtfulness. He admits fault for overlooking issues, expressing regret for his failure to recognize signs earlier, and sees his mistake. Grace stands considering Benjamin's admission, unsure of her response. Benjamin questions the root of her emotional turmoil, seeking understanding or confirmation from her silence. Benjamin wonders if he should console Grace, debating internally about the appropriate response. His uncertainty highlights his emotional turmoil and desire for resolution. Inwardly, Benjamin struggles to remain composed and not waver under emotional strain. A battle ensues within him, preventing him from fully giving in to sympathy for Grace. After a pause, Benjamin resigns to Grace's desires. His reluctant agreement reflects his acknowledgement of circumstances, surrendering emotionally to her terms. Despite his acceptance, Benjamin notes a complication. His thoughts lead towards understanding there are unresolved issues that could affect both parties involved. For nobility like Grace, divorce invokes legal procedures affecting high society. The implications suggest enduring challenges and public scrutiny, navigating a world of decorum. Legal declarations emphasize the rules governing noble actions. These dictate months of unavoidable appearances, implying a lengthy and complex bureaucratic process ahead. Grace is shocked at Benjamin's mention of official events hindering the divorce. The realization unsettles her, revealing an unexpected layer of difficulty in her situation. Grace contemplates whether such regulations complicate their life, acknowledging a host of obligations tied to noble status. The thought of public appearances adds to her burden. Grace asks Benjamin's assistance with tasks, showing reliance on him despite tension. Their exchange signifies a complex relationship, balancing personal desires against societal roles. A view of the legal office emphasizes its symbolic weight of procedural decisions and pending actions related to Grace and Benjamin's affairs, illustrating their tight space. A man sits alone, expressing frustration about his lack of engagement. Despite his status, he feels unfulfilled, longing for meaningful involvement or entertainment. He acknowledges the monotony of his current role, yet his position demands patience. Reflecting on his title as the Crown Prince, Sylvester's mind considers potential diversions. An abruptly entering attendant elicits surprise, addressing him formally. The interruption presents an opportunity to break the mundane routine, catching Sylvester's attention. The Crown Prince, Sylvester, acknowledges the attendant's urgent tone. Curiosity piques his interest, leading him to question the purpose behind the sudden call to action. The attendant announces a divorce application from a noble, hinting at significant repercussions. The news intrigues Sylvester, implying potential involvement from higher authorities. With intrigue, Sylvester contemplates the divorce application's implications within the noble hierarchy. He ponders the ramifications and identifies Grace's family as the source, sparking curiosity. The application stems from the Felton household, adding a personal element. This reveals an unexpected connection to Grace's lineage, hinting at broader implications for the crown. Sylvester's reflection on the Felton family's involvement marks a sudden turning point. His thoughts forecast impending developments in high society politics and personal relations.